Welcome back to Spring Into Math 6. This is Mr. Stein, and today we're talking about fractions using division. Okay, so last time we talked multiplication, this time we're talking division. So, we're going to jump right into it, dividing fractions. So we're going to start out by dividing this fraction below. We're going to look at 1/3 divided by 4/8. Now, the first step in dividing fractions is that we first look, as always, to see what we're doing. And we know, okay, we're dividing fractions, so the second step is you got to flip the second fraction. Now, lots of ways to remember this. You're going to hear it as the reciprocal, which is totally correct. I always would say just flip it and multiply, so you're just going to flip it and multiply. So once you flip the second fraction, then you just multiply the first fraction by that flipped fraction. So essentially, 1/3 divided by 4/8 becomes 1/3 times 8/4. You just multiply straight across. 1 times 8 is 8, 3 times 4 is 12, so now we're left with 8/12. And then, of course, we have to see, is it in simplest form? Well, I can tell you it's not. I know an 8 and a 12 both share a 4, so 8 divided by 4 is 2, 12 divided by 4 is 3, so our simplified fraction is 2/3. Okay, let's look at another one. We're looking at 2/4 divided by 3/10. So again, we know we're dividing fractions, so we're going to flip the second fraction. So 3/10 becomes 10/3. And then we're going to multiply the first fraction by the second fraction. And just like we did in our last lesson with multiplication, multiply the numerators first, then multiply the denominators. So when you multiply the numerators, you have 2 times 10 is 20, and 4 times 3 is 12. So now we're left with 20/12. We're going to simplify this fraction. And we're going to say, well, they both share a 4, so 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 12 divided by 4 is 3, so we're left with 5/3. And then it's letting us leave it as a improper fraction. If you needed to make it into a mixed number, you would simply take 5 and divide it by 3. It would go in one time, so it'd be 1 and 2/3 would be your mixed number if you needed to make it like that. Okay, so let's look at dividing fractions with mixed numbers. So we have 2 1/4 divided by 3/8. So we need to write 2 1/4 as an improper fraction, just like we did when we were multiplying them. Because essentially we are going to end up multiplying them after we flip the second fraction or multiply the reciprocal. So 2 1/4 turns into 9/4, and then you're going to divide that by 3/8. So again, we multiply by the reciprocal, or we flip it and multiply. So we take 9/4 times 8/3. Now, when you have 9/4 and 8/3, what you can do is you can do something where you can divide out the commons. And so you can see here, I know it's not the clearest pick ever, but when you see it, a 9 and a 3, so you're looking at the numbers that are across. A 9 and a 3 share a 3, so if you divide out a 3 of it, it makes your simplification much easier. So you take a 9 divided by 3 is 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so now you have a 3 and a 1, and you're going to do the same thing with 8/4. 8, and you're going to pull out a 4 from each of them, so 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 8 divided by 4 is 2, and now I'm just multiplying across. 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1, so 6/1 is the same as 6. All right, let's try another one. So again, we have 3 5/6 divided by 1 2/3. So we can't leave them as mixed numbers. As mixed numbers, we need to turn them into improper fractions. So we have 6 times 3 is 18, plus 5 is 23/6, and we're going to divide that by 1 2/3, which we convert to an improper fraction by taking the denominator times the whole number, so 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5/3. So now we have 23/6 divided by 5/3. And again, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, or flip and multiply, so we have 23/6 times 3/5. Then, if you can divide out some of the common numbers. Well, a 3 and a 6, they share common numbers. They share a 3, so I divide out a 3, so the 3 becomes a 1 and the 6 becomes a 2. Then you just multiply across, making it a little bit easier. So then you have 23 times 1 is 23, and 2 times 5 is 10. So now I have 23/10. And I can't leave 23/10 like that, so I want to turn it back into a mixed number. So I divide 23 divided by 10. That gives me 2 with 3 left over, and you put it all over the denominator. So I get 2 3/10. All right, let's try one more. So this time we're going to look at 3 different numbers. So we're going to evaluate 5 1/4 divided by 1 1/8 minus 2/3. So again, we have to turn everything that's mixed number into an improper fraction. So we have 5 1/4 turns into 21/4. We have 1 1/8 turns into 9/8, and then we subtract it by 2/3. So our new equation reads 21/4 divided by 9/8 minus 2/3. So then, just like we would do when we did anything, we're going to use our order of operations first. So we know we're going to divide first. So we're going to flip it and multiply. So we have 21/4 times 8/9. And you can see that they divided out the commons, and it ends up giving us 14/3. And then you subtract 2/3. And luckily the denominator is the same, so you just subtract across. 14 minus 2 is 12 over the same number, so it's 12/3. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. All right, so that's going to wrap up dividing fractions. See you next time.